Hi lovely people, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Liana and I will be sharing with you how to upcycle a suit into a suit dress, as well as altering menswear pants into new fitted perfect pants. Here's a look at the before and after of the suit in which I transformed. It belonged to my dad originally, which he stopped wearing a long time ago, and so I decided to put it to good use. I'm super happy with the result of the dress, and I've matched it here with some mini bike shorts. It did turn out to be a little bit more shorter than I had wanted, and so I've just paired it here with some nice flared formal pants. Onto the second transformation, I upcycled my dad's oversized suit pants into nice fitted flared pants. Without further ado, let's jump into how to do this DIY. First things first, we're just gonna get some clippers and unpick the shoulder pads from the shoulders, because as you guys can tell, these shoulder pads ain't pretty on my body shape. So I'm just going to go to the shoulder seam here and just unpick all that seam to take out the shoulder pads. Next, we're going to shape up the shoulder seam to make it a little bit more fitted to my shoulders. And how I'm gonna do that is just reduce that amount right there. So I'm gonna blend it into the armhole instead of making it go all the way down there. I'm gonna blend it in gradually from this middle seam here. So I'm going to just draw a line. Now, I actually wore this jacket before drawing in to know how much I wanted to reduce, because I actually just played around and did something like that while I was wearing it, so that I know that I wanted it to be reduced by approximately yay. And then at the back, we're going to have to blend it in. Okay. So now I'm just going to unpick this shoulder seam, because we want to cut this area here, but in order to cut it, we need to unpick the seam. So we've got it unpicked all here, and now we're just going to cut to follow that line in which we had just drawn. Alright, so now I've just folded it in half because we want to reflect this shoulder seam to the other side of the front. So we're just going to copy that front line that we did before, and we're just going to blend it into that seam there. So that's the line in which we're going to cut. So the next step is quite an important step. I'm going to try find another accessory to jazz up the current buttons that we have here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these buttons. I actually think they look really fabulous with this kind of fabric and the print. So if I don't find any new buttons in my button stash here, then I might just leave it. But I'm just trying to decide which one will go. Okay, no joke, I cannot decide on the buttons. Oh my god, that's cute. That is so cute. This one's almost the exact same size. I mean, I think that looks quite nice with the fabric. I really cannot decide. So I'm gonna place a button right here. And then from that, this overlap seam on the side here, I'm going to make it to form a nice neckline here. So I'm just going to draw an imaginary line of how I want that neckline to sit around my bust. So after I've drawn that line in here, I'm going to draw it a bit more properly on the table. This will get blended in with the center back seam here. So this is the center back seam, and we're going to reflect the same onto the other side. I'm just trying the suit jacket on again one last time before we cut it, just to make sure it's the cutting that I want for the new bust area. So that's the imaginary line at where we're going to cut later. I don't think I'll need to get darts in place because I think it will fold nicely. So now I'm just going to fold the jacket in half like so that the left and right sides of the suit is matching up nicely, and that we can cut it all in one go with this new change of neckline and bust line. So starting from the center back seam here, I'm gonna cut along past the shoulder seam, past the front bust, around that new neckline, and all the way down past the lapel lapel. So there you go, there's the new bust line created. All this old lapel and collar part you can just get rid of. So as I've tried on the suit, I realized that I need to take in some of the excess space that's happening at the back, because the back is also quite oversized. So I've just put pins in place at where I want to reduce it and to alter it to my shape. I've measured it out and it comes to 8 centimeters right here at where we want to reduce it. I need to also take into account the seam allowance of 1 centimeter on each side of the center back. Taking away all the pins, I'm going to open it up again, and looking at this center back area, I need to take 6 centimeters on this side and 6 centimeters on this side. So before I cut the new seam at the center back, I'm just going to place all the pins in place, and then I'm going to mark in 6 centimeters right next to the center back line, and this will be a nice guide for us to know where to cut next. So that's the new center back line. So the next thing I'm going to do is clean up all the raw edges that we have happening. So what I'm doing here is just pinning together all the seams so that they are ready to be sewn together nicely later. I'm also going to cut off any of the excess fabric which don't match up with the seams. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is just pin the center back seams together, pinning each layer separately. So this is the proper fabric center back seam line, and then we'll do the lining center back seam line after. After we've placed all the pins in place at the center back seam, we are going to go ahead and sew down the center back seam. Sewing down separately the lining as well as the outer fabric, and voila! After sewing the center back seams together, we are now going to add bias binding to the neckline and the bust line all in one go. So next I'm just going to slim the sleeves down, and I'm going to do this at the bottom stitching line here, at the bottom of the sleeve. I'm just going to take it in at maybe 2 centimeters to slim it down, and so that the sleeves fit me a little bit better. And I'm just going to do a shortcut and just sew on top instead of unpicking the stitching line. And I'm going to do the same on the other side now. So after I've attached the bias binding to the edges of the new neckline, I'm just going to sew down this part here. I've put a pin in place at where I want it to be fastened and tightened at, which is right above my waist. So using that pin, I'm going to hand stitch it down and then add a little button feature at the edge there. Next, we're going to get some mini buttons to hand sew to the bust line area. And now this is optional, but I'm just doing it because I want a bit more security around my bust area and so that it's not so open and exposed. And to finalize the shoulder seam, I am just going to hand sew the remaining exposed seam. And voila, there you have the completed suit dress. To properly give it a nice look, I'm just going to give it a nice press. Please excuse the blanket that I'm using on my table because I don't have a proper ironing board at the moment, but it does the job, so it's all good. Next, we're going to move on to the oversized pantsuit. Now this is actually very large on me, so what I'm going to do is just put a pin in place at where I want it to be fitted. I'm going to do this at the center back seam instead of the side seams due to the pockets. Moving on, I've tried it on, I've placed the pins in place at where I want it to be reduced. I actually did put a pin at bottom of the seam, approximately midway around here, at where I want it to start blending in with the existing seam that's here. I'm just going to measure where the pin is placed, and it looks like it's a 5 centimeter reduction that we're going to take away from here. So I'm just going to draw a line at where I want it to be reduced, and I'm going to kind of blend it in all the way until here. I don't know if you guys can see that triangle, but towards the end of the seam here, I've tried blending in that line there. so that it looks a bit more seamless and blended into the existing seam line. So I'm going to take away the pins. I'm going to keep it folded, and what I'm going to do is cut the 2 layers at the line in which we had just drawn in. And so this is what the open seams look like. We're going to sew them together so that it's combined and seamlessly connected with the existing seam at the bottom crotch. Alright, so let's go ahead and start sewing it in. So we're going to start at a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hem the pants. I've just finished ironing the new hem that I want so that it stays in place and it makes the sewing a lot more easier. So now we're just going to do some really subtle hand stitching. What I learned from my mom is that when you do this, you grab the inside of the hem and just a little bit of the layer of the front trousers. And this, if you pick up a little bit of the fabric, it won't be obvious at all that you did a hand sewn hem because it'll look like a blind hem. So that's all the hemming done. Pretty much a blind hem. You can't really see any of the stitching whatsoever. I'm pretty happy with that. And so that comes to the end of the transformation. Here is a look at the before and after. And so that comes to the end of my DIY upcycling video tutorial today. I hope you guys enjoyed watching today's upcycling video. If you did, make sure you click subscribe and comment and like down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Have a lovely day. Bye.